go on a mystical tour today. Well, I don't know. Somewhat, at least. Yeah, somewhat of a mystical tour. All right. We begin with a verse from the book of Samuel, Shmuel. It says, V'yas David Shem. And David, referring to King David, made a name for himself. How do you make a name for yourself? So the simple meaning is, as Rashi explains, that David made a good name for the Jewish people by burying the dead of their enemies. Others explain that he made a name for himself through his heroism. But the Zohar takes it in a mystical level. The Zohar relates and says that King David executed mishpat tzedakah. Not according to the simple meaning, he didn't execute, but justice and tzedakah, charity, to all. And therefore he made the name. What name? The name of God, the divine name. So the Zohar, it says, Reb Shimon wept and said, who makes the holy name every day, he asks. And he answers, the person that gives charity to those in need makes God's name. So the Alter Rebbe is going to deal with two issues over here. How can we say that you can make God's name? How do we understand that? God's name sounds like something beyond what we could, God's name is God's name. It's like, it's like you say to a person, well, I made your name. Well, maybe your parents gave you a name, but, they didn't make the name. They make. So how do we make God's name? How do we understand that? Give me just 1 second. We're talking about God's name, the Tetragrammaton. There it is. 1 second. Just looking. Shem Havaya, God's name. But actually what we're going to do is focus on the first 2 letters of God's name. So how do you make God's name? And why is it being made specifically through tzedakah, through charity? Another letter to give us another appreciation of the mitzvah of tzedakah. Many letters, the last 2, have been about that. And now we continue. So to understand this, we need to understand what our sages explain, that on the verse, Yud Kei Tzura Elamim, that Yud and a Hey of God's name, which is actually a name in and of itself, from the Tetragrammaton, the first 2 letters, Yud Kei as we call it, because we don't pronounce Yud and a Hey, those 2 letters are the strength, the rock of God, and through it God creates. Through the letter Yud, he creates the spiritual worlds, specifically Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, the spiritual realm, and this world through the letter Hey. Okay, so we need to understand the relationship between the letter Yud to the spiritual realm, to, again, specifically Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, where the souls go after finishing this world, and this world, the letter Hey. So let's focus on the spiritual realm, where after leaving this world, accomplishing what we accomplish, and getting cleansed from whatever we need cleansing, ultimately the soul comes into Gan Eden and delights from the Shekhinah, from the radiance of God. Something we explained previously, the garment that we make, and so on. And it gives us a capacity that we can experience in the lower world of Gan Eden, or the higher world of Gan Eden, the pleasure, the apprehension of the divine. That it will be revealed, the Ein Sof, to our soul, a glimmer of the divine, everyone according to their level of what they can comprehend and apprehend based on what we've accomplished here through our Torah learning and mitzvahs that we fulfill. So that's why the world to come is referred to as Bina, understanding, because it'll be permeated with the light of divine understanding, Bina, that the souls can apprehend and understand of godliness. And where is this coming from, Bina? It's coming from Chachma. And this is the Yud that we're making reference to. The letter Yud, right, is the source of the spiritual realm. Chachma, supernal Chachma, that flows into Bina. And what is Chachma? Is like in our minds, it's the intuitive initial flash of an idea that comes into our mind. And in Bina, we are able to, through mental gestation, to develop the idea, expand on the point of it, to develop, to have a full understanding. So it comes out what Chachma is a primordial stage of intellect. It's before you get it. You don't get it. Like, when the flash comes into your head, and, you've been working on something and finally it arrives. The flash of intuition. You don't understand it there. You don't apprehend. It's beyond you, but you're getting a glimmer. You need to fully develop it. Right? So Chachma is that stage that it's still obscure, it's concealed, and it needs to come into Bina. There, when it flows into Bina, so it's only, the light that is so, powerful in Chachma is now very much reduced in Bina, making it possible that now you can kind of grasp the finer details. But intrinsically, this light is beyond. It is intrinsically concealed, this light. And only a glimmer kind of flows into Bina, a detail that we comprehend. So this is what the Zohar says, that Chachma is referred to the dot in the palace, Nekuda behechala. So what's the palace? The palace is in reference to here the spiritual realm, Gan Eden. Hechala is the palace, and it's being illuminated with a dot, as the letter Yud is the smallest letter and can be represented by a dot. When some people actually, when they write script of the Hebrew letters, they just use a dot for the letter Yud, being that that's the concept of it. Chachma is like a dot, just like a dot. When you split it in half, you know what you're left with? A dot. Split it again in half, as many times as you want, you're still left with a dot. It's a sign of the infinite. That's why Chachma is a power of maintaining or containing the infinite light, Ein Sof. And that's why, even though it's the source of understanding, it itself transcends understanding. And it's illuminating this dot, the point, the dot in the palace. Which means that the soul that's in the palace, this palace referring to Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, right, is illuminating, and a little bit of that dot comes into a manner of apprehension, comprehension that we get. But essentially it's something beyond. So the souls are tantalized by, first of all, apprehending something, but at the same time recognize that there's something much greater, much more profound. And that's why Chachma referred to as Eden, the source of Gan Eden. So, right, Eden is the source of Gan Eden. The garden means the garden, the palace. And Aden is an eye that never beheld. Why? Because it transcends the apprehension. That is what happens to the soul in Gan Eden, right? Now we're going to go further with this idea and explain now Chachma. What is Chachma? It's the source of that which is beyond. It itself is beyond intellect, transcends intellect, but yet is the source of intellect. Just like that, or the source of comprehension. When we say intellect, it is part of intellect, but it is transcending comprehension. Right? Because when you get that seminal flash, that lightning bolt of the complete point, it's a point that is like, can't really grab onto it. You don't have it. You sort of have the idea, but it's not developed into something complete. So that's the Chachma. So now we're going to go further with this idea as brought further in the Zohar, right? This is all teachings from the Zohar. And says that, moreover, Chachma is referred to as the father. Well, now we get why Chachma is the father, because it's the point. It's like the semen that is, everything is there, but nothing is developed. Where does it get developed? In Bina, in the mother. Bina is the mother who takes the seed and develops it, the 9 months of gestation, of course, to its length, depth, and breadth of a fetus. That's, in general, what we speak about father and mother in the divine order of things. But now we're going to go further. Father, the Zohar says, founded the daughter. Okay, what does that mean? So now we just explained the dot in the palace, Chachma, how it illuminates and is a ray. From it comes a ray of comprehension of light that is in the palace, in Gan Eden, in the garden, where the souls are illuminated and tantalized by what they get, and at the same time realizing that there's something way beyond what they comprehend. But now we're going further with an idea, and that is that Chachma Father is the source of daughter. Now we're all going to speak about this we're going to give it in human dimension in a moment, but the whole idea here is just ultimately, and we're not going to get there today, how all of this is translating into the beginning of the class, how you make a name through God's name, because first we need to understand God's name and the creative power of God's name. So what we've explained is so far one aspect of Yud, of Chachma, and now we're going to explain another aspect of Yud, of Chachma, of Father, and that is, again, that it is the source of the daughter, right? Interesting, by the way, the mother is the source of the son, but we're not going to go there today because that's not the discussion. But, so what is daughter metaphorically? Malchus. What is Malchus, meaning sovereignty, royalty, and what is that in the human condition? In our soul, it means speech. It means speech also above, but speech. It's in reference to speech. So that means the Alter Rebbe is going to go into the whole concept now. What is speech? What is, I think it might be only 50 years, maybe a little more than that, I'm not certain. But those who are in the field, maybe let me know, that speech was always felt that it has to do with intelligence, right? So, a child that spoke early, well, must be a very intelligent child. Or at least it's got to do with emotions because, speech, what do you talk about? Those things that you have feelings towards. So the Alter Rebbe explains today, and actually this is again from the Zohar, based on the Zohar, and also in the Talmud we see this concept that no, speech is actually developmental. It's not based at all on intelligence. It is actually sourced in Chachma. Again, Chachma is part of intelligence, but it's not developmental. Speech is developmental. I'm sorry. My apologies. It's developmental. In other words, you develop, and it's not intelligence, right? And when the Chachma develops, so therefore it brings about the capacity of speech. That's the concept over here. In other words, it's not you develop your intelligence. If you're going to start your kids with crossword puzzles when they're, 1 year old, so hopefully when they're 1.5, they're going to be already Oxford scholars and, graduates. No, because it's not, again, based on understanding. It is beyond that. Letters emanate from the soul, not as a result of intellectual capacity. It's not also inherent or the nature of the organs that they should pronounce letters. In other words, that, there's something about the soul that has the capacity that the organs, through breath and the sound of that comes from our breath and from the pronunciation, the movement of the lips and the 5 organs that develop speech, like lips, like pay. It's not like the nature of the organs of the body that they should have this capacity, or it's the nature or the intellect that compels the utterance or the pronunciation of letters. So it's not a conscious mental effort, in other words, because if it was based on intelligence, and you need a conscious mental effort to move your lips in a specific way to pronounce the letter pei or shin, right? I have to consciously think, because it's based on intelligence, my speech, to move my lips in a certain way to make the letter pei, or engage my larynx and gut in order to say the letter ches, which is guttural, right? It's not that way at all. On the contrary, the change of the movements of the lips depends on different pronunciations of letters that the soul wishes to utter by means of the lips. So when the soul desires to pronounce the letter base, vav, mem, or pei, the lips will instinctively, spontaneously move accordingly, because that's the soul's desire. And it's not the other way around, that the will and the intention of the soul to make the change in the motions of the lips. It's not that the soul wants, the soul wants now to make a certain movement of the lips, right? And this is, as the Alter Rebbe says, it's empirically evident, right? The soul is not engaged in such a manner of desiring to move the lips in a certain way. The soul just wants one thing: pronounce the letter. Its desire is to pronounce the word. And therefore, automatically, the organ of the body that are engaged, the 5 organs, the breath, just follow suit. And this is like pretty simple, but the conclusion of that is that the whole thing is not based on intelligence then, right? And we see that very clear, like when it comes to the vowels. There's a kometz aleph o, patach aleph a. By the way, that's the Ashkenazic way to pronounce, and kind of shows that the Ashkenazic way to pronounce things is different. You know what the kometz means? Squeeze. Kometz, you squeeze your mouth, right? And therefore you say a kometz. A kometz is a line with like a small t, right? It's a vowel. So, and then patach means open. You open up your mouth. You don't squeeze your mouth. You open your mouth. That's what the word actually means. Patach, like patuach. You open up and you say uh, patach aleph oh, right? And then kom, it's come aleph oh. Why I do that now? Was it the intelligence of my soul that knows to make I want to squeeze, so I have to be conscious of the squeezing? No, I'm not conscious of it. To make a comment, patach, I know the distinction. Or is it because the will of the soul is that it wants to make a squeeze, or it wants to make an open mouth? Squeeze mouth, open mouth? No, not. What is it then? Simply the soul's desire that it wants to say aleph, oh, patach, aleph, ah, right? So it's the desire to say the letter, and automatically the organs of the body will follow what the desire of the soul is to say the particular letter, pronunciation, word, whatever it is. Hence, that means it's not based on intelligence, because it's not a conscious effort that you need to be constantly engaged with your intelligence. It's beyond intelligence. That's why the father begets, founds the daughter. Chachma, that is beyond intelligence, the source of intelligence, but beyond it, transcends it, then becomes the foundation for speech. And this is why the Alter Rebbe concludes today's class, why an infant cannot speak even though they understand everything. A 2-year-old, I had children who actually are really good speakers, and they have great intelligence, and they didn't speak to 2.5, and really even 3. And others that spoke before 2 even, and they're not as smart. So it had nothing to do with that. So an infant cannot speak even though they understand what's going on. And that's why they get frustrated, by the way, because they understand and they want to be able to express and they can't. So the speech doesn't result from revealed or apprehended intelligence, but it's more of a called hidden intelligence, which is chachma. And that hidden intelligence, which is chachma, right? It's a source of revealed comprehension in Bina, hasn't been developed yet. And that's why the child can't express, even though they have intelligence of understanding. That's today's class. What does that all mean? I have to wait to come back. What's the point that the Alter Rebbe is telling us this? We're going to have to wait. But let's unpack a bit over here. To make this a little more personal. So we started off with David making a name. How does he make a name? God's name making it. What does that all mean? How do you make God's name? And it's specifically through charity. So we didn't even touch that. That was our jump into the issue of understanding God as creating the spiritual realm through the letter Yud. This physical world, which we can get into, the letter Hey, which is the first letter Hey, which we'll get to. And so what we explained over here is that in the spiritual realm, there is a comprehension of that which is transcendent, that there's something transcendent, yet they get a glimmer of it, the souls in Gan Eden, in the palace, the heavenly palace. All right. So, and the source for that is Chokhmah, and now what we explain is the source of Chokhmah is also speech, divine speech, and we explain that how it is down here in human speech, which but I just to say that, um, again, I think maybe 50 years ago, maybe it's a little more than 50 years ago, maybe it's even 100 years. I'm not certain, but it's definitely not 1,000 years ago that people thought that that speech is an indication of intelligence, and it's not, as the Alter Rebbe explained here. Um, it's not. So, what do we take home? So, in Gan Eden, in a spiritual realm, if we are more of a spirited, soulful individual, that will express itself in that we get something, and then that little something that we get, we know that there's something so much more. Could say that that's a kind of, the difference between materialistic person, materialistic or 5 cents person, someone who's God forbid, not worth 5 cents. Actually, it's interesting. I think about 100 years ago, some scientists said that if you took all of the materialism of the person, all the fluids and all of the chemicals of the person, um, they would be sellable on the market for 34 cents. So today maybe that's $8. I think it was about 100 years ago. Some scientists said, that's the sum total, the value of a person, in materialism. So if materialism, the 5 senses is your world, then all there is what there is. There's nothing more. What you see, what you hear, what you taste, and what you smell, and what you touch. And that is real for you. There's nothing more. There's nothing more. And you don't look for anything more. You're just satisfied with that. Obviously, that is not satisfying. That is not what makes us human. We have a soul. So even though we're a soul within a body, and we're speaking here about Gan Eden, where the soul is untethered to the body after our time here, after 120 in this world, but yet we can still understand that the soul, and the soul that I have in a body, is beyond the 5 senses, beyond the materialistic, reductionist approach that science would suggest that we have, and how will that express is that when I'm experiencing something, whether it's learning Tanya as we are now, or whether it's experiencing anything, that all I'm getting is from the soul's perspective is a mere glimmer. And there's so much more. That mere glimmer itself, and recognition that it's God creating, is that itself brings divine pleasure to the person. And at the same time, recognizing there's something much more transcendent and much greater and beyond, is also giving a yearning for that which is greater and more of the divine. That's a take home from today, at least a thought of mine. And likewise, if when we connect with another human being, we can connect with them, as I've mentioned many times, thank God I've been blessed with, what my wife and I, we call Hasidic family planning. We should all have family planning, but Hasidic style, not Western culture style, which means one boy, one girl. No, 5 boys and 5 girls. That's what we've been blessed with. And 5 girls and the boys, but the girls in particular, wonderful, are wonderful. I mean, they're all wonderful. That was my point. They're all wonderful, but their beauty shines. And many people mention to me, "Wow," and I say, I'm not so fond of that, because then it's detaching them from their soul. I say, you're right, beautiful, beautiful from within, that's expressed beautiful from without, physically. That the physical is, an expression of the spiritual. So when we connect with another, that we can connect with them in that notion that there is not merely just the physical, but there's really a spirit behind there. See the glimmer of it. Know that there's something much more, and don't limit yourself to that physical, perception of the individual. That is a takeaway, for me at least. Now for questions and comments and thoughts. And before we get into hearing verbally, which is great. It's great, actually, from every day from Clubhouse, because it's great to have conversation. That's what Clubhouse provides. But before I lose the feed, I want to check on Facebook. I think I saw some questions. I think I saw. And don't forget, folks, I know now that. Clem, having a problem in... Oh, okay. It's a question. Okay. Well, duly noted. Okay. I know now that. Don't forget 2 question marks before you ask a question. Okay, Clem. Yes, that question will be dealt with. Do we have here? Clubhouse. Jeffrey. Anna. Batya. Vilma. Marcy. Welcome back, Marcy. I guess there's great clarity over here today. Anybody else? That's it. Wonderful. David?
Rabbi. Oh, whoa. I'm on 2 speakers, sorry. I was just, I know now that, basically, I was saying that, you were saying that we use the 5 organs and our intelligence doesn't necessarily come from speech. Our speech doesn't come from our intelligence, and
not from a revealed apprehension of intelligence, but from kadmus haseichel, the precursor of intelligence, the source of intelligence, of chokhmah, right, which is called the hidden intelligence in us.
So can I say that what I said here is like we see that in politicians, because the things that comes out of politicians sometimes is not so intelligent.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, thank you. If we use our speech in a negative way, how does that affect our soul? Well, of course, negatively. Right, so we're not talking here about the effect of speech. We're speaking about here where speech comes from, the source of speech. But of course, speech is powerful. It does affect, and of course, positive speech and speech that is appropriate, godly, has a godly effect, and that's something we learned in the first part of Tanya. And negative, of course, has a negative effect. Absolutely. Marcy, welcome.
Hello. So I don't want to argue with the example, and I'm not going to. But I wanted to add some more depth to the idea.
Please do.
So my mother is a speech therapist. My daughter had speech therapy, and I had a lisp growing up, so I did my own speech therapy working with my mother to cure it. So what's interesting is that, and this is, I think, true of everything, right? Some things come natural to people. Like, some people are just naturally kind. They're naturally giving. There's no thought behind it. And other people really have to remind themselves all the time, I need to be kind in this situation. I need to be good in this situation. I need to listen in this situation, where other people are natural listeners and other people. So what's interesting is as an individual, we can kind of see what we have to work on and what we have natural ability at. And so, and part of the work of moving through Tanya and Torah study and learning is honing your natural abilities so they're even more natural, and refining the things you want to work on so that they come more naturally. And so I kind of like that idea that at some point we all had to learn how to speak, how to walk, how to be kind, how to listen. And that's a spectrum. We're continually working on those things. And I like that idea, so that eventually it will become not at the level of consciousness, but below the level of consciousness, where it's just a thing that we do naturally.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. The refinement in such a way that you are naturally kind and compassionate, and that's the work that we need to work on. Some of us need of that. Some people need in other areas. Exactly what you said. All of us have great abilities and also areas that we need to work on. And something that we've mentioned in the past, and then thank you, Marcy, for bringing it up, is that the things that we're good at, we naturally have an inclination that we want to develop further. The things that we have a challenge, often we want to run away from. And likewise in relationships, right? People that I feel naturally comfortable with, so I want to develop that relationship. The person who I'm not so naturally comfortable with, but is a family member, so we really actually want to run away from that. No, maybe that's the whole reason why that person's your family member, is because that's an area in your life that you need to develop in order that you can refine yourself in the area that there's probably a difficulty, a challenge that you have. That's really, if you look at it, you could say, well, that person is this and that person is that, but the only reason that person is this and that is because that's the way you see them, and you see them that way because of the hole in your soul that needs fixing. So yeah, absolutely correct, Marcy, absolutely. And so getting back to the idea of speech, being that it is developmental, so then what you do is things to help develop the areas that are necessary. So, I see that with one of my grandchildren in particular, who's got a disability, and as a result, with speech therapy and other things, and what it is trying to develop things in order that we have the improved capacity. Absolutely. Very good. I see. Give me a moment here on Facebook. I haven't. So David is asking, I've heard that when we are born, we have a limited amount of words given to us to use in our lifetime. We are told to use speech wisely. Yeah, there is. I don't know what that means exactly, but yes, correct. Yeah. I'm not exactly certain, but yeah, there is such a teachings. Greg, if physical and spiritual are connected, do those who act out in negative ways have a negative spirit? So I guess Greg, on just what we just explained, we all have pros and cons. We all have positive qualities and negative qualities. So the negative ones doesn't mean you're a negative spirit. It means it's a challenge that we have in our life that we need to work on. That's what it means on. Does that mean that person's a bad person? Does it mean that person's a negative spirit? I don't think that that's the way we should be looking at ourselves in those areas or looking at another person in that way. No, it means that this is the person's challenge. Now, of course, it's very easy to put someone and pigeonhole them and to label them as that, you're such a miser, you are such a unsympathetic person, and label them as such. That's very convenient, easy, and our negative nature wants to do that. But the positive side of us doesn't want to do that, wants to see it in ourselves and in others, the challenge that God has given them, that they can, I choose and others choose, to deal with their challenges, right? Think about ourselves in those areas. Are we dealing with those challenges or not? Or are we, just trying to develop our better side? And the negative side is, that's me, accept it. I just, I'm a judgmental person. I'm not such a kind guy. That's who I am. And, that's not what it's meant to be. But that's the choice we have. I hope that was clear, Greg. Thank you for the question. Anybody else? Question, comments? Marcy, I hope that helped a bit. But thank you for sharing.
I do want to add one more comment.
Sure.
Just a clarification. When we talk about people that we're staying away from, we're not talking about, abusive people. We're talking about people who, they just rub you the wrong way. There's nothing wrong with them. They're not mean or abusive or horrible. They're just, maybe their voice is too high and it hurts your head, or maybe you don't like their coat, or, normal things, not crazy things.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, absolutely. When we, what does it mean crazy? Crazy would mean that someone who is totally abusive, physically, mentally, emotionally. But there can be people who are kind of, maybe a little too full of themselves, and, they make comments, and, and they're, but they're judgmental. That's not net. I wouldn't call that, off the radar. They'll make a comment. Oh, look at you. You're all dressed up so nicely, not like yesterday. Yesterday you looked a mess. Now, some people say, well, that's abusive. Well, that's not abusive. It's not nice. I wouldn't suggest that, we act that way. Just say the positive. Wow, you look great today. You don't have to say, well, not like yesterday you were, da-da-da. So now, if that's your mother doing that to you, or if that's your, sibling doing that to you, so what are you going to say? I'm not interested in you because, that's hurtful to me. Maybe that's why you have such a person in your life. Of course, I'm choosing someone who's close to you, right? And they're saying these kind of things because maybe that's some of the, the things that you need to deal with, and not allow, because someone said something that wasn't so pleasant, that it should hurt you. Be secure in who you are, and not how, being secure only because based on what people say about you. Be secure in who you are as if you're a Jew, as a non-Jew, someone who is valued by God Almighty, and know that you got value. And if someone devalues you, again, if it's, off the charts, and that's a different story, but, regular stuff. So I hope that makes, I wanted to make sure, because everybody, what they consider, abuse, can be very, very subjective. Does that make sense, Marcy?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Jeffrey, please share.
Well, just that, maybe put a little finer point on this, that
that, somebody could be just fine, not abusive, not even rub you the wrong way, but there could be something in your relationship, because this just, something happened to me recently, that, it's not the other person that makes me say, oh, I want to stay away from them. I mean, it's not the other person in the sense that they did something or that they didn't do something, but, that it triggers something inside of you. I think this is more kind of what you were getting at. It triggers something inside of you that you said that you may not even be aware of, but like you say, no, you know what, I'm not going to call them back, or no, I won't invite them, or something like that. And what it's really, hopefully one would have the, you can use the right word for this, but I'll say, the wherewithal, you have the awareness to say, wait a second, that didn't really happen. It's something in me that's like making, maybe something I feel bad about in myself, or something I know I needed to develop, and I feel jealous of the other person, but you may not even be aware of it. So it doesn't even have to be something that somebody did or anything.
Excellent. Yes, thank you for sharing that, Jeffrey. Absolutely. And the key is, in all of these instances, instead of pointing the finger at someone else, take the three fingers back at you and look at yourself and see, why did that bother me so much? It's not about them. It's really about me, what's going on between my two ears and my head. And to first, to appreciate that, take that apart, and based on that, reassess the way I was thinking earlier. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Absolutely. Daisy, every person is a bit crazy in a good way. Yeah, in a good way, sometimes not so good. Not so good. You're right, both ways. Absolutely. Yes. Okay. All right, folks. Reminder, today's Rambam, 12:45. Come and join us for Laws of Shabbos, heavy-duty stuff, great stuff. And we will continue our conversation here, learning tomorrow, understanding further. But and tomorrow and thereafter, this is going to be a few days.
Oh, I meant to mention, I got my son in a journal over the weekend.
Oh, beautiful. Great. How's journaling going, Marcy?
Well, I haven't been to a class since except this one, and I missed half of it. So I'm not well, but I'll pick it up tomorrow. God
bless you. Should be gesund and well. Everything should be well. And hatzlacha to everybody. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you for Chabad Zich and Kadeshim in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.